Speaking of other defamation cases, now let's talk about the vampire in the room, Marilyn Manson. It's funny because it's like this is a very, very interesting case. Have you guys read the complaint for this one at all?
I've read the basic facts. I'm just more interested. What's your favorite Marilyn Manson song, Alita? I mean, really, that's the one. Because for like, is it Beautiful People? Is it Tainted Love? Is it Personal Jesus? Like
Sweet Dreams.
Sweet Dreams. You like Sweet Dreams? You're a Sweet Dreams guy?
It's
his version of Sweet Dreams is really good.
I have to admit, it's been a while since I heard a Marilyn Manson song. And I also have to admit that this is going to surprise no one because I am the most basic pumpkin spice latte, Uggs wearing person in the world. I am actually, if I met Marilyn Manson in person, I would probably be a little bit afraid.
I had friends in high school who looked like Marilyn Manson. So like, this is not, I'm like in the zone.
And it's absolutely no disrespect to Marilyn Manson, because I feel like that's part of that is the desired impact, with that aesthetic, right? Because he is decidedly countercultural, decidedly subversive. Like, I mean, he's got music videos where he had boobs, and he had, like before trans was a thing in society, you know what I mean? Like he has spent his entire career being the one that just cuts right against the grain of our pop culture machine, Yeah. And so I think that, the fact that I'm maybe a little bit intimidated, maybe a little bit afraid is a good thing.
But it plays into the perception here. And that's the thing, is that that's very salient, because it's how people feel. So when it comes into a lawsuit, people are predisposed against Marilyn Manson because he is this guy, and people think of him as a creepy guy. But just because you look at him and he looks creepy doesn't mean he's morally creepy. And that's the whole point. Right. I know people who look like that, and they're great people, and they are morally great people. It's nothing about their character.
And that's another thing that I was going to say, is that, that is the aesthetic. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about that person's character. And I would venture to guess that most people that have that kind of aesthetic, that brand themselves as the outcast, as the weirdo, as they tend to actually be very nice people. That's been my experience with people that have that sort of, like I said, that have that sort of aesthetic, that sort of vibe. They tend to be actually very nice people, very welcoming, because they're kind of outcasts. So for other people that feel like outcasts, and that's why he has such a strong following too, right? He's got fans that have been his fans for decades, because they see a lot of themselves in that, even if they don't physically look like that, that's what they resonate with. So, but that poses some very serious challenges for a jury, because you have to find people truly that can be unbiased, that can say, okay, this is a very strange sort of, career sort of, brand, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that he did the things that his ex-girlfriend claimed he did. And so that's what's at the heart of this defamation case, is that Evan Rachel Wood, he and Evan Rachel Wood were in a relationship until 2010 for something like 4 or 5 years. And then it ended, they parted, they went their separate ways. And then I think in 2016, she had some kind of an interview with, I think, Rolling Stone. She was sitting down, I believe, for her part in Westworld. And she mentioned that she had been R-worded twice. Once was by somebody that she had been in a relationship with, and once by some kind of a bartender when she was, I guess, trying to leave or something like that. I don't know, but basically a bartender. But she didn't name them. She didn't name who they were. And then along comes the Me Too movement. And I can totally go into my thoughts on the perils of having a social movement, having a hashtag, having a sudden overnight flip that everybody's changing their profile pictures, everybody's adding to their bios. Like, I have a skepticism for precisely this kind of a reason, is that you can have Jussie Smollett making indications about BLM to claim that he's just being BLM, but he's hijacking it for his own purposes. You can have people, and I don't know if what Evan Rachel Wood said is true. I don't know that for a fact.
Can we,
I am looking into this.
Alita, maybe it would be a little bit helpful to get like the facts like of that, because like, sorry, someone's trying to call me, but like the facts of what was alleged, because I mean, what's alleged is kind of incredulous. What's actually alleged, and to my understanding, because I just read this, is that this happened during the filming of a music video, which would be really ridiculous because there's a lot of people there who are witnesses. You now are like, and it's on film too, to a certain degree. So I mean, it's a lot. Like, that is a strong accusation that is very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot to pick apart with her allegations that, that you can pick apart because of, video and photo footage that people can sort of line up with the timeliness of these allegations, right? It's similar in that respect to Amber Heard's allegations against Johnny Depp. Anyhow, but the Me Too movement happened, and then in 2020, she had another interview where she actually names him. She says he R-worded me. And so he then filed a defamation lawsuit within the statute of limitations, it appears, because it's I think it's 2 years in California, and he's within 2 years because it was September 2020. So, I don't know if maybe
that's a long time, by the way. Intentional torts here in New York are a year.
Yeah, in Virginia, the defamation lawsuit is 1 year. I believe in California it's 2 years.
It's just it's a very interesting scenario, right? Because it's so long after the incident, the alleged incident, right?
Yes,
alleged.
But in this, so what he alleges is so he's got intentional infliction of emotional distress is actually his first cause of action, which I thought it was interesting because a lot of times when you file a civil lawsuit, you've got your listing of causes of action. Usually you'll put your strongest one first, and then you'll add in whatever afterwards. And in this one, he lists intentional infliction of emotional distress first, which in my experience, that's been like third or fourth order down. Like, you kind of add that in because you're like, you did all of these things wrong, and it was probably intentional, or at the very least reckless. But so he has IIED claimed as number one. Then he's got defamation per se, and then violation of the Comprehensive Computer Data and Access Fraud Act, and then fourth, impersonation over the internet. The allegations get wild, like really, really wild. I mean, we are talking about her and a friend / romantic partner, another woman that she was friends with, and I guess they start a relationship or something. There's allegations that they had a conspiracy to bring in more ex-partners of his, and to sort of have everybody's statements line up, have everybody's declarations line up, and to have everybody sue him basically at the same time, and to say, oh, by the way, these things all happened 10 years ago, but it was so traumatic that these memories went dormant, and I just now remembered them, which is incredibly suspect. Like, that's incredibly suspect for everyone to suddenly wake up at the same time. That is weird to me. I'll just say that. Like, I don't know for a fact if any of these things are true. Maybe some, maybe not, maybe, but that to me rings entirely suspect right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then you've got Ilma Gore is Evan Rachel Wood's, like friend / partner or whatever. Apparently she also supposedly made an email account that to make it look like it's Marilyn Manson's account to set things up to make it look like he was disseminating CP, I think, or something like that. I can't remember. I read through this the other day.
That's some weird couple. That's some weird couple stuff, and that's some insecurity right there. That's some real insecurity.
But it's also there's an allegation that they impersonated an actual agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation by forging and distributing a fictitious letter from the agent to create the false appearance that Warner, that's Marilyn Manson's real last name, that Warner's alleged victims and their families were in danger, and that there was a federal criminal investigation of Warner ongoing. So there's there's a lot of craziness in this. I might have a separate live stream just to go over the complaint, because it's crazy. These allegations are crazy, and I don't know if they're true or not, because any complaint is always going to be drafted in a way that is most beneficial to you. You can make whatever kind of allegations that you want. It doesn't mean that you've proved them from the complaint, but
if it is, if even like a percent of that, like if the impersonating a federal officer, like if that is true, then I'm on the juicy side of this. It needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The punishment needs to be as severe as possible under the law, because it is reprehensible. Because just like faking a race crime does a disservice to all those who genuinely suffer from race crimes, perpetrating a fake sex crime undermines all those who genuinely deal with sex crimes. I was actually talking with someone here who genuinely in Korea experienced a genuine sex crime, and it's a horrible experience, and absolutely, traumatic, but it undermines that when there's people who come out there and will be faking that. It really does. And that's why. So I have zero sympathy if it's proved true at trial.
And I will say, as far as proof goes, so far, there is one woman on YouTube, who was a fan of his, that had a weekend with him, and they had relations. She has come out and said he was wonderful to me this entire time. In one of the women's lawsuits, she alleged that this woman who was a fan had been mistreated, had also been, whatever. And she was like, that's not true. None of that is true. And also, I think that maybe this might be the reason why Marilyn Manson even knew about this letter and the check boxes for everybody to check, to have this alleged conspiracy of women, is because this woman who has a YouTube channel was one of those women that was solicited for this. And she was like, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not, none of this happened to me. And so it's crazy. It's crazy.
I'm first learning about this right now, and I'm finding it. The thing that's most shocking to me, because I never heard of Evan Rachel Wood, is that we have a heterosexual relationship here where the dude is named Marilyn and the woman is named Evan.
Welcome
that's
to
what you're hung up on here.
The 21st century, Joe.
After all of the facts that I lined out,
I'm just that's to me the most
Good
shocking
logic,
thing.
the boomer of LawTube.
Seriously.
We have a general who just won Man of the Year. Or sorry, Woman of the Year.
But there's both cis male, cis female, classic heterosexual relationship. And I'm just saying it's kind of interesting that a dude named Marilyn
get hetero flexible, Joe. Come on.
Although I think that Ilma Gore is gender fluid, but the allegations are drafted referring to Ilma as a woman. So that's why I am referring to Ilma as I should have probably mentioned that ahead of time. But there's been a lot of like complicated factoids on top of it. But
will this be filmed? I want to call, I would stream this one if it was filmed. I want to call dibs on this. This be a hell of a trial.
Unfortunately for those of us in LawTube, it is in federal court.
Federal court. Okay, yeah. So
I would seriously consider going to trial and observing a la Mr. Joe Neerman.
Man on the street.
Yeah. Anyhow, we have a question in the chat for Bree. What's your opinion on this?
What is my opinion on the allegations? I'm not sure because I read some. I think Evan responded saying that, oh well, this is why people are afraid to come forward with their rape story. I mean, with their R-word stories, because people like Marilyn will sit there and file a lawsuit against them and make them afraid to come forward with their story. And if I'm not mistaken, there's a documentary coming out, but is that about Marilyn or is it just a different documentary she had?
It's about Evan Rachel Wood. Like she and Ilma had this all set up for them while they were I guess, moving forward with I don't know, with these allegations or something like that.
So maybe like kind of the hype up the press about the documentary, maybe. Yeah.
So
it's sort of like LFG. What happened with that? We covered that on LawTube, and that debauchery, right, where they're hyping up this story because they have some media coming out and they know they're going to make money on that, but they're also going to ruin somebody's life. And is that worth the money you're going to get off your documentary or whatever else?
Yeah. And I will say, Bree raises an important point too, is that, you know, when there are legitimate claims, it is a concern for anyone to come forward with their claims and then to get a defamation suit, you know, filed against them. Now, just because somebody has filed a lawsuit does not mean that they are correct in their narrative, right? Because a classic example that I love to go back to is, you know, Lance Armstrong. When people accused him of doping, he sued everyone, and with the greatest ferocity that you can ever see. And so everybody was like, oh wow, he's really defending himself. He's really serious. Like he's not in doping. Like he had his miraculous climb to the top, you know, because of, you know, cancer treatment or whatever, that his body was destroyed and he rebuilt it from scratch. But then it turns out that no, he absolutely did. And no, like he really abused a lot of people with the legal system by suing them, and especially in the fashion that he did. So yeah, of course, that's a good point, is that the fact that somebody has filed a lawsuit does not on its own mean that they are correct with their side of things. And I can see a lot of women with legitimate claims being very, very nervous to come forward because of the possibility of a defamation lawsuit that could have a chilling effect. Yeah.
I have less sympathy for a celebrity who has millions of dollars and who has a financial incentive to actually do this versus, I mean, in the case of, it's a lay person. Yeah, that might be the case, but this is not a lay person. This is a very sophisticated, wealthy person who is a public figure. I understand that. That can be a legitimate, you know, statement, but definitely does not apply in this case.
There was this complaint alleges that she claimed that he raped her during a filming of an actual music. Which video? Which music video?
Heart-shaped glasses.
Heart-shaped glasses.
We cannot play it because I don't want Ms. Bites here to get a copyright strike. Also to get a definite content strike. Because it's spicy. Like it's a scene in which, like, but think about it. If you agree to do a love scene in a movie, like, you're gonna get some hands on you. And she's saying that it went further than that. It went too far.
Right. All right.
Yeah. And Bree, were you going to say something?
Yeah. So she brought that up in an article talking about how people are afraid to come forward. It doesn't necessarily mean that what she did, that she's telling the truth. But if he's able to prove all of the things like pretending to be the FBI agent and gathering a group of women, it sounds like they kind of had like a congregation, a little meeting about, this is what he did to us, right? And everyone's like, right. So if he is able to prove that, I don't think it'll look good for her. And then it will also look like she's using the Me Too movement to kind of further whatever project she might have coming out.
Yes.
I would definitely agree. And I would say that the one thing that's more fearful for men in the Me Too era is that there doesn't need to be a court case at all for men to get canceled and removed from products. Johnny Depp was removed from products before anything was proven in the court of law. He was stricken off of all that before anything was done, you know, and that's the scary thing. People are fired. I know people in as a corporate attorney that were fired for mere allegations that were never proven. That stuff happens. And now they may be merited, they may be unmerited, but there are consequences even for people putting stuff on social media, regardless of whether a claim is filed or not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, so this is a classic example of why, you know, sometimes these social movements can be very problematic sometimes, you know, not always. I mean, there are a lot of women, there's been a lot of truth that has come out, you know, people like Harvey Weinstein, for example. You know, that's a guy that, you know, he got the book thrown at him, and rightfully so, it seems.
Utter slime.
Yeah. Yes. And that's one of those situations that it absolutely should be that way. You know, and that someone with that level of power would not have fallen without something like the Me Too movement. But it's always a scary thing when somebody can hijack it just like that.
And I think Pekinia is saying the documentary is already out. It's about how she was a child. And, I don't know whether this is true or not. I mean, that's just what she's saying. But I mean, let's say it was out. That just makes it even more because it's already out for people to purchase and look at and, monetize. It'd be like putting a book out and then, pointing people to your book.